All right, let's dive into something you might not think about every day. Help authoring tools.
Yeah, the unsung heroes of user-friendliness, you could say.
Exactly. Think about it. All those user manuals and help systems and knowledge bases, they're all powered by these tools.
It's all about making tech less, well, techie feeling for the average person, right?
Absolutely. And we've got a fantastic guide for this deep dive. Senior technical writer Curt Robbins wrote this amazing article, and this guy, he knows his stuff.
Oh yeah, his background is impressive.
FedEx, Microsoft, Wells Fargo, even Northrop Grumman, just to name a few.
So when he talks about help authoring tools, we listen.
Right, he breaks down 6 popular ones in his article. Really digs into their strengths and weaknesses. So shall we jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, first up is Adobe RoboHelp. Now this one's been around for a while. It's known for being pretty user-friendly.
Which is huge because a shorter learning curve means writers can focus on writing, not on fighting with the software.
Totally. And, being an Adobe product, it plays really nicely with the other Adobe stuff.
Oh, absolutely. If you're already using Creative Cloud or FrameMaker, for example, the integration is seamless.
And we can't forget about mobile devices these days. Everything needs to be accessible on phones and tablets.
True, and RoboHelp handles that beautifully. The responsive design capabilities are top-notch.
So content looks sharp no matter what you're viewing it on.
Right. A good user experience across the board.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, RoboHelp can be a bit on the pricey side. Might be a barrier for smaller teams or solo creators.
So maybe not for everyone's budget then. All right, next we've got ClickHelp. This one's all about cloud-based collaboration.
Real-time teamwork, baby. Like Google Docs, but for help authoring.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Makes it easy to grasp.
So no more version control nightmares.
Nope. Everyone's working together, seeing the same thing.
Perfect for remote teams. But being cloud-based, are there any limitations?
There can be. Sometimes you might not get the same depth of features as you would with a desktop-based tool.
So, maybe not ideal if you need super customized designs. Okay, let's move on to a bit of a different one. Confluence.
Now, this isn't strictly a help authoring tool, but it's often used for that, especially by agile teams.
Right, it's more of a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
For collaboration and knowledge management.
But it can definitely handle documentation.
And the Jira integration is a big plus, right?
Huge, especially if you're already using Jira for project management. It just slots right into your workflow.
But maybe not the best for a standalone help system.
Or for content that needs really specific formatting.
So, Confluence, a good team player, but maybe not a solo artist. All right, let's shift gears again. Now we're talking Help+Manual. This one's for our solo creators and smaller teams out there.
The no-frills, get-it-done tool.
And very affordable from what I've heard.
Oh, definitely budget-friendly. Plus, it uses a WYSIWG editor.
WYSIWG.
What you see is what you get.
So no coding required.
Exactly. Very approachable for writers who aren't tech-savvy.
User-friendly and budget-friendly. Sounds like a winning combo.
It is for the right projects. Simpler help systems where you don't need a ton of bells and whistles.
Got it. It's like the reliable everyday car, not the luxury sports car. Okay, moving on to the big leagues now. MadCap Flare. This is the one Robbins called the powerhouse.
And for good reason. This tool is built for handling massive, complex projects.
Like what kind of massive are we talking?
Think large software companies, multiple products, constantly evolving features, global user bases, that kind of scale.
Wow, and MadCap Flare can handle all that.
It's designed for it. One of the key things is single sourcing.
Now remind me what that is again.
Basically, you write your content once, then you can output it to all sorts of formats, web, PDF, print, you name it.
Without having to redo everything each time.
Exactly. Huge time saver and keeps everything consistent.
But I'm guessing this power comes at a price.
You bet. MadCap Flare is definitely a more advanced tool. Steeper learning curve and a higher cost.
So not for the faint of heart or the light of wallet. Okay, last but not least, we've got Paligo. This one seems to be all about structured content.
It's all about organization, yeah. Think of it like building with Legos.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Each piece of content is like a Lego brick, carefully defined and standardized, so you can assemble and reassemble them in all sorts of ways.
So it's super adaptable for big, complex projects.
Exactly. And Paligo's great for collaboration, too, especially for teams working in multiple languages.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. 6 very different tools, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
And choosing the right one depends entirely on your specific needs.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
And that's what we'll unpack next. figuring out which tool fits which situation. So yeah, like picking the right shoes, you wouldn't wear hiking boots to a fancy dinner.
Definitely not. But how do we figure out which tool is the right fit for us? I mean, where do we even start?
Okay, first things first. Think about your team. How many people are involved and what's your budget like?
Right, because those are big factors.
Huge. If it's just you or small team and you're watching the pennies, Help+Manual or ClickHelp could be good options.
Okay, yeah, Help+Manual being the simple, straightforward choice. And ClickHelp if you need that cloud collaboration.
Exactly. Now, if you're in a bigger company, and especially if you're already using a lot of Adobe products, RoboHelp might be worth a serious look.
Because of that seamless integration we talked about.
Exactly. Saves so much time and hassle.
And you get those responsive design features too. But what about those really massive projects, the ones that make your head spin just thinking about them?
Ah, yeah, for those, you're looking at MadCap Flare or Paligo. The heavy hitters, you could say?
The ones built for handling complexity at scale.
Precisely.
So what are the key differences between those two?
Well, MadCap Flare is all about that single sourcing magic. Write once, publish everywhere kind of thing.
Right, I remember.
Paligo, on the other hand, focuses on structured content.
Which is like super organized, right?
Yeah, it's like having a perfectly labeled library. Every piece of information has its place.
So you can easily find it, reuse it, repurpose it.
Exactly. And because it's so structured, it's
Yeah.
really adaptable to changes.
So if your project is constantly evolving, Paligo can keep up.
Exactly. But keep in mind, both MadCap Flare and Paligo, they're more advanced tools. They take some time to learn, and they're not cheap.
Okay, so those are the big considerations. Budget, team size, complexity of the project. What else should we be thinking about?
Well, technical expertise is important. If your team is comfortable with coding, that opens up more options. But if you're looking for something more visual, more code-free, you want to focus on tools like Help+Manual or RoboHelp.
Right, for those of us who aren't coding wizards.
Exactly. Another thing to consider is the scope of your documentation. Are you creating a simple user guide or a massive knowledge base covering tons of products?
Because that's going to influence the features you need.
Absolutely. And don't forget about output formats. Do you need to publish online, create PDFs, print physical manuals?
Right, some tools are better suited for certain formats.
And then there's collaboration. Do you need real-time co-authoring, or do you mostly work independently?
Okay, so we've got budget, team size, technical expertise, scope, formats, collaboration. My brain is starting to hurt a little.
I know, it's a lot to keep track of, but the key is to just focus on your specific needs. Don't get distracted by shiny features you don't actually need.
Right, it's all about finding the tool that empowers you to create the best possible documentation for your users.
Exactly, and that brings us to a really important point, something Curt Robbins emphasized in his article. Don't lose sight of the user experience.
Because the tool is just a tool, right? It's the content that matters most.
It's like having a fancy oven but not knowing how to bake. The tool itself won't make you a great cook.
So we need to think about the people who will be using our documentation.
What are their needs? What are their pain points? How can we make their lives easier?
And that's what we'll dig into next. How to create documentation that truly helps people. So we've got the tools, we know what to consider. But how do we actually create documentation that's truly helpful? Not just words on a page, but something that people actually use and understand.
It all comes down to, like, communication, Like, you wouldn't explain quantum physics to a 5-year-old. You'd use simple language, right? Meet them where they are.
So it's about empathy.
Exactly. Put yourself in the user's shoes. What are they struggling with? What are they trying to achieve?
What are the questions?
Right. Once you understand that, you can start crafting content that actually helps.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, think clear, concise language. Short sentences, bullet points, visuals, anything that makes the information easier to digest.
Like bite-sized chunks of knowledge.
Exactly. And the instructions should be super easy to follow, step by step, no ambiguity.
Makes sense. And what about searchability? Because let's be honest, most people don't read these things cover to cover.
Oh, absolutely. They want to find specific answers quickly.
So a good search function is essential.
Essential. And your content needs to be well structured so people can actually find what they're looking for.
Makes sense. Any other pro tips for creating great documentation?
Test it.
Oh yeah, get feedback from actual users.
See what works, what doesn't. You might be surprised at what you learn.
It's like getting a fresh perspective. Because when you're so close to the project, you can miss things.
Right. And remember, documentation is never really done. It's an ongoing process.
Because Things change, products evolve, new features get added,
Exactly. You need to keep reviewing, updating, refining.
so it stays relevant and helpful. It's like tending a garden. You got to keep nurturing it.
Perfect analogy. And speaking of thriving, good documentation isn't just about helping individual users.
Right, it has a bigger impact, doesn't it?
It can save companies a ton of money on support costs.
Because if people can find answers themselves, they don't need to call for help.
Exactly. Plus, it leads to happier customers, less frustration, more satisfaction.
Which is good for everyone, really.
And it can even boost your brand reputation.
Because if people have a good experience with your documentation, they're more likely to have a positive view of your company overall.
It all ties together. On the flip side, bad documentation can really hurt you. It drives people away, creates a negative image.
So investing in good documentation is a smart move for so many reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to Curt Robbins and his article.
He's given us so much to think about.
He really highlights how important it is to stay current, because this field is constantly evolving. New tools, new trends, new challenges.
But even with all that change, the core principles remain the same.
Clarity, accuracy, empathy for the user.
Those are the foundations of great documentation. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, remember those principles.
Choose the right tools. Craft your content with care.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into help authoring tools. Until next time, happy documenting.